IT at Cork Tech Summit. Cork City Hall, 9th of May.
But first of all, with the title of the discussion, Dare to Be Yourself, will you please welcome our next keynote speaker. She is director at VMware. Welcome to the stage, Charley Woodward. Thank you, Charley.
Right then, thank you very much. Let's start with a thank you for having me here today. We do have an online audience, so hello to you as well. Hands up who's seen the film Bohemian Rhapsody. So those people hopefully can coach the people that didn't have the hand up, that what Freddie does, the Freddie Mercury is the lead singer, would do an AO. And in return, the audience would give one back. What I'd like to make sure is that our online audience know we're all in the room. So on the count of 3, yes, I'll do a 1, 2, 3. AO. Come on. We can do better than that. One more time. You ready? Ayo. All right. Thank you very much. Right then. So, let me introduce myself. So, Charley Woodward. I'm director of the EMEA Renewals business, responsible for our channel. I've been in VMware for just coming up to 13 years. And for the first 11 years of that, I was coming to work as somebody else. So I've entitled my presentation, Dare to Be Yourself. I want to talk about, I work in a company of 24,000 employees. A company that actually, statistically, should have 144 transgender people in the company. And to my knowledge, there's 7. Now, that's if I believe the statistics today. The real statistics are likely to be at least double that. But from my perspective, the reason I'm so privileged and feel so humbled to be here today is I've seen that number go from 1 to 7 since I made the decision. So one person's story helps others encourage other people to be themselves as well. I mean, a few of my observations in my post-transition have been I've had multiple times where people have now complimented my outfit I'm wearing. That never happened once in the 30 years I was in the IT industry. I've had on 5 occasions, men offer to carry my briefcase or my suitcase for me. That never happened before. And I've even had, actually yesterday I got wolf whistled by the taxi driver who was asking me whether I was in the fashion industry. So I guess the message to all those people giving the compliments, keep up the good work. I do appreciate it. Right, so let me get started. So what I've got in here, so Dare to Be Yourself, is Andy Warhol once made the classic quote of, everybody's going to be famous for 15 minutes. Well, I guess for me, I had my 15 minutes of fame. I mean, was it 470? Going from 3 to 5 hits per month for the previous 5 years, to 471 hits in the first week of my LinkedIn profile changing in terms of my name, and in terms of that announcement. And I had no auto notifications switched on, so this was just pure word of mouth. And if I fast forward to 2 years, it's been 14,000 hits, and was it now nearly 700 friend requests. Some of them are quite odd, so I don't accept them all. But it's been quite a surprise. So my message there is is that it has had an impact, and it's been quite a surprising impact in there. In terms of my agenda today, so my agenda today is fairly simple. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about where I came from, what got me to the point to make the decision that I made. What was it in the run-up to that? And one particular word I'd like to spend some time talking about is the word bravery. It was a word that really, when I made the pre-announcements to people, this word came up time and time again. And so much so, it made me want to look in the English dictionary to make sure I understood what it meant. Because maybe it's something I should be concerned by. So I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Then I want to talk about, in terms of the domino effect, when one person tells their story, what the impact for others is of that. And I've had a really nice story that I'd like to share with you. And then to finish with, I'd like to share a little bit about questions and answers. And these are just questions that people asked of me at the point of transition. And then I'd like to finally share the story of my brother, who met Charley for the first time a few years ago, and what that experience was like for him. So, introduction to Charley Woodward. So, if I went back to 7 years old, I can remember going in my parents' bedroom. I was trying to make a Robin outfit, not even Batman, and putting on my mother's tights and thinking, oh, these feel nice. Now, you have to remember this is an era and an age where this is pre-internet. So, this kind of, those early years of realizing, this isn't right or isn't meant to be right. It wasn't something that was encouraged. I then remember going through my teenage years. And okay, this is the 80s, but I was going out wearing makeup, going out wearing fairly outlandish clothes. And it would be wrong to say everybody in the 80s was doing that. I'd lived in the suburbs of the West Midlands in Birmingham. This wasn't typical behaviour. I was going into nightclubs in the centre of Birmingham I had my first experience of meeting my first trans person, which really blew me away. I remember at school having the situation where when Boy George came on Top of the Pops Thursday night and going to school on the Friday, euphoric about that experience of seeing this person that you thought you could relate to, that when you go into school, you got a very different reaction to that. You got a very negative reaction. And then I also remember, this is a story I've had with one of my friends as well, is I remember buying my first wig and going out in that and getting laughed at by my friends. And that pushed you back into your box. It just kind of pushed you back to, just fitting in. And then I kind of talk about, the middle years of my life in terms of, when you get busy with life. You get busy with relationships and college and work and promotions, having children, paying mortgages and school fees and bills. Kind of those middle years. And it's not something that I look back and ponder and regret and think, I wish I didn't do that. But it's just part of life. And when you're so consumed with life, that Charley component of my life got parked. And then I got to 2006. And in 2006, I just had a bit of time on my hands. I was working for a startup company that had been acquired by VMware, actually. And it's one of those moments where they say, look, we want to keep you, but we don't know what we want you to do for the time being. Go and make yourself busy. Which is very nice to have, but the danger is when you've got time on your hands, it's the devil goes to play. And that brief few months just reignited Charley in my life. And what I started doing, going to what's called dressing services. And these are all over the country. I mean, there's one in Cork, there's one I know in Dublin I used to go to. They're everywhere in terms of, and this is somebody's house that you can go to, and in that house, the way I describe it is that you're the piece of canvas, you're not Picasso or Van Gogh. So somebody else is creating this person of you. And in that room there's a wig and there's some clothes and some jewellery and some makeup. And somebody else creates that painting for you. So from 2006 all the way through, it kind of like, I was happy to live in that world. It was a secret world. It was safe. It became normal. And I had these two separate worlds going on. Then I got to 2010. And 2010 was a big year for me. It was a big year in terms of I had two friends. One that was the fittest guy I know of my age group, super fit, unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, and within 7 months looked like a 97-year-old man, and unfortunately passed away very soon after that. And then 3 months after that, another dear friend, unfortunately got a phone call to say he's been run over in the Marylebone Road in London. And these two big things came at me. And this was big news. This was stuff that really impacted me. And for me, it gave me that shake to say, this is my life, live it. And it kind of, a quote I would give is from a nurse that worked in a hospice for 15 years, capturing people's regrets at the end of their life. And the number one on the list, when people are at kind of the final, sitting on death's door, was, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not in a way I thought other people would live it. Kind of then those when I read articles like that, whenever I have situations like, in VMware we had poor Jason O'Hanlon, who's a partner business manager I was recruited into the company a number of years earlier. When he passed away, unfortunately he had leukemia, he fought it twice, it took him. for me, that was information. It's like, whoa, this is my life. So then it went from 2010 to 2012 to then pluck up the courage to then be myself. To actually go out the door. And this wasn't about going out the door with work. This was just going out the door in terms of the clothes I want to wear and living that kind of partitioned life. So went out in 2012. And I remember back then, for me, there's no master plan here. There was no, I'm definitely going to transition. I remember in 2012 talking to a friend and saying, would you ever go full time? No way. Why would I do that? But for me, I call it birth by 1,000 cuts. Those big ones that happened in my life that were the big tragedies. But then there's been lots of things that have kind of rippled into that. So post-transition, for me, I say I'm director of the EMEA Renewals business responsible for our channel. This is a $1 billion revenue stream, so 10% of our revenue comes through this component of the business. I love VMware. I love the culture. I love the vision of the company. It's great. So if I feel I can contribute to that, great. And I guess for me, in terms of that process, when I first announced this is something I want to do, sat with my manager, Anna Long was fantastic, superb. But it's fair to say she wasn't experienced in this, and that's not a surprise. Why would she be? But what she did was perfect. She went off, she went to HR. HR came back with a transition guide, and this transition guide was fantastic. It really gave me confidence that the company that talks about our values, talks about our culture, actually lives by that. And it's very easy for lots of companies to tick that box of diversity and say this is what they do, but they truly do it. So that meant a lot to me. And then as part of that process, I realized that HR said to me, right, what do you want to communicate? I was like, I don't know about what am I going to write? I remember going home that night and waking up 3 o'clock in the morning with all sorts of ideas in my mind, and much of this is capturing that, which was, what is it I want to say? So I wrote this great big thing, and what I realized is when you've been in a company for 13 years, you owe them more than just an email communication. You owe them more than that. People that you work with or sit with or used to work with. So I then had 22 reach outs with different people in the company. And I have to say, it was the most humbling experience of my life, because it's very easy for us all to be superficial in the work life and go to work and do our jobs and go home and we've all done a good job. But actually, how much of our real self do we bring to work? And when you do something like that, what comes back is amazing, what kind of echoes back at you. So that word bravery, I talked about it, it kind of came thick and fast at me and really made me think about, am I meant to be scared of it? I said I went to the point of actually, going into the Oxford Dictionary and making I read through it. And what it reminded me actually was a couple of stories related to my girlfriend, Maria. So I remember we were in New York, and this was in 2015. I'm there as Charlie. Obviously, my work life is still this other person. And we're sitting having gin and tonics in this bar, and Maria leans forward, and she just suddenly said out of the blue, she said, it takes real balls to do what you do. And I remember when she said it to me, I was like, it really made me think in terms of how far I'd actually come in my personal life, that this was me. So it was a very simple sentence that actually really rippled through and really echoed inside me. But the second story to that is I can remember I was going shopping and we'd see a nice outfit, and I'd say I'd love to wear that in the office for VMware. Or I'd see a nice dress, I'd love to wear that for the Christmas do. And she'd say to me, do you think that'll ever be possible? I said, I don't think it will be. No, I don't think it will. And the reality is, absolutely can be, and it has been. And for me, in terms, for the first time in 9 years, to go to the VMware Christmas do, we don't go to work just for money. We go for the work for the whole social experience, the stimulation of it, and the human interaction of it. So when you find you can take your full, authentic self to work, and you can, throw yourself into worldwide kickoffs and be the last person going to bed at night, being, the Christmas do, and staying up, just really enjoying it and really being part of it. It's amazing, actually, when you lift all those hats off, how empowered that it makes you feel. So just can kind of continue in terms of I talked about the tragedies that kind of came in my life. And the first one I got captured in here is the inspiration of kind of the clock's ticking. We're not going to be here forever. And for me, in that, it was several things that kind of made me think in terms of that. So the first one was a conversation I had with my dad. This was a number of years ago. I remember talking to my dad about, is there anything positive about the aging process? And he's 85 years old at the time, and he kind of thought about it. He said, no, not really, which I have to say depressed me a little bit to hear that news. But then he paused, and then he said, but it does beat the alternative. Now, we both laughed at that moment. Now, the truth is, none of us in this room actually know what the alternative is. But those words just echoed in my ear, and they echo in my ear to today, is live your life. It's your life. The second one is kind of, the memoirs of Steve Jobs. And whether they're real or whether they're not doesn't really matter, but the message in there does matter. And it was a message he said in the memoirs which captured, when a man's, in hospital on their deathbed, he said, when you've established the level of wealth that he'd established, you can pay for somebody to drive your car. You can pay for somebody to do pretty much anything for you. But when you're in your sick bed, you're lying it yourself. So it's kind of that, that message again brings it back to, be true, be honest, and live your life to yourself. And the other one would be around, magic ticket of life in terms of boy or girl. At birth, if I could have had that choice, I'd have chosen girl. But I can't have that ticket. And there was a time when I really focused in on, how that really ate me up inside. Where I sit today is, I'm actually really just proud of my differences and my own uniqueness. And I'd echo and really give that as a strong message to you as well. That it's, we all are unique, and we should embrace that. And kind of this, next piece in terms of what got me to the decision. So, not sure if you've heard of somebody called Ralph Waldo Emerson that lived in the 1800s. He was very much, he was a poet, but he's very focused on human individualism. And the quote most of you probably are aware of and probably know is, life is a journey, not a destination. And it is for all of us. It is. And it's important to embrace that journey and embrace that destination we're going, and really take it on board about the change that's happening and what, the things as you evolve. But the second quote I really love, which is and it plays back to that nurse's quote, which is, in a world that's constantly trying to make you somebody else, to be yourself, is, just the perfect accomplishment. And that's really what I'd kind of focus in on. So that domino effect, as I say, and we talk about Brownie Brophy. So last year I spent some time with the head of our worldwide field operations, so Maurizio Carli. And I said to Maurizio, for me, Maurizio, and he's known me for many years as somebody else, I said, I'm not looking for special treatment. What I'm looking for is people to step past their judgments and say, do I do a good job? And if I do a good job, I get rewarded. And if I do a rubbish job, and I do a rubbish job on a regular basis, I get fired like everybody else. This isn't something special I'm looking for here. To which he agreed. He nodded his head. Anyway, at the end of this session, the lady came over from the comms team and kind of rushed over and said, can I spend some time with you? And she captured on camera the story, and it went on the VMware jobs page. And I was lucky enough last October to go to an event called Out and Equal in Seattle in the US. And I met Brownie. I said, just chatting to her, and said, how long have you been in the company? She said, about 6 weeks. I said, what made you join? She said, you did. I said, really? Why? She said, well, I saw the video on the jobs page. She said, I'd already heard VMware, good things about VMware as a company. She said, but when I saw that, she said, I showed my wife, and I knew that as a company I want to join. For me, that's hugely humbling. But the message to you is, for companies to embrace diversity, it can't just be about doing the right thing. It's got to be about impacting the bottom line. But impacting the bottom line is around driving your broader pool of talent into the organisation and driving up your retention rates of top talent. That's what works. And for me, it's made me feel really energised in terms of the company. Questions and answers, and I'll just run through a few of these, so I'm conscious a little bit tight on time. The first one was quite funny, is do I sound any different? And this came out of a question, actually, I did a pre-presentation before the announcement came out. And at the end of it, about 80 people on this call, and a lovely lady at the end of it said, could I ask a question? I said, yeah, of course you can. And I won't name her. She said, does Charley sound any different? To which I replied, she can if you'd like her to. It's kind of like, for me, no, of course she doesn't. It's the same person. And I think that's kind of the message in there. You know, the he, she, they, it piece. I mean, I have a problem when people refer me to as it. But for me, I prefer she, I prefer her. But I get, you know, to me, it's, you know, pronoun isn't a word I get overly hung up on. You know, for me, it's about the intent behind the statement. If somebody's being, you know, truly intentful to be rude and unkind, I do know the difference than when somebody's just being forgetful, yeah, or distracted. And that happens. And I've found if I don't hold people to task on the, you know, the he on the phone, or when they, you know, they say it, they later come back to me and say, I'm really sorry. And what I've found by doing that is it doesn't alienate me and them from each other in the relationship. Right then, so, just to kind of summarize at the end, I want to share with you my brother's story, when my brother first met Charlie. This was a number of years ago. And I remember him saying, these were his words, he said, I was really nervous. He said, I was so nervous I walked around the building 3 times before I came in. He said, when I walked in, he said, yep, I was a little bit shocked. He said, but within a few seconds, it was just you. He said, and a little bit later, he said, actually, you look pretty good. But the final statement, which I really loved, was he said, you know what, this isn't the most interesting thing about you. And I don't want it to be. This isn't the thing I want to go on my gravestone, that I was transgender. I'd really hope the things that go on my gravestone are I was honest, kind, thoughtful, hardworking, loving, caring. Yeah, some more meaningful stuff than the fact that I'm transgender. You know, it's kind of just an aside. But then just to kind of finish with, and this is a quote that got captured by a friend actually, is when you're damaged on the inside, it's hard to shine on the outside. Now, whilst I wouldn't capture myself as damaged, what I would say, I was carrying a level of complexity inside me that meant that actually when I was able to lift that off, and take away these, say I thought I was wearing 2 hats, I was probably wearing 25 hats, hiding from the history of my life, hiding from the school friends I used to know, for fear of them seeing me and judging me. I've lost nobody at all. My friends have, I've got 4 wonderful children, really lovely, gorgeous children that accept me for me. I feel extremely humbled and blessed and really thankful for that. Because for me, the cost of losing your children through this decision is a big cost. And I do know people where that's happened for them. That's really sad. But in terms of bringing it back to me, I mean, my boss's boss captured it in a quote, said, I always said, I worked well in VMware. I always delivered a lot. I've been there 13 years. But when Charlie transitioned, this person moved to a new level. Because I feel like really in the room. And I'm really, if I'm lucky enough to be given 2 feet and I'm not here, I'd rather go somewhere else. But I love the company I work for. I feel really humbled and privileged to be there. And for me, this is a thank you to them for allowing me to be myself. And hopefully for you, and kind of the summary piece of it, is dare to be yourself. For me, this isn't a presentation on transgenderism. As I said, I'm a survey of one. I don't really understand it myself. But for you sitting there in the audience in the room, and for you sitting there online, it's if you're sitting in any situation where you're not being treated with respect, whether that's a marital situation, a racial situation, whether it's a religious situation, whatever it is, be true to yourself and be honest and make the decisions in your life, because you own your happiness. And that's been the kind of big message for me. So at this point, I'd like to say thank you to you all. I'm not going to ask you to do another AO. Others may, but thank you so much.
IT at Cork Tech Summit. Cork City Hall, 9th of May.